Question is that this bill be now read a second time. I call the member for Herbert.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on the Tax Laws Amendment Small Business Measures No. 3 Bill 2015. The dry part of the bill is that this bill is the third of the four bills the coalition government has introduced as part of the government's $5.5 billion growing jobs and small business package. When I say it's a dry part, there's a massive change for small business, a massive boost for small business, but this is a reasonably dry bill. This bill amends taxation laws to help provide taxation relief to small businesses and provide less red tape. More than 70% of our small businesses, as the member for Higgins and Parliamentary Secretary just said, more than 70% of our 2 million small businesses are unincorporated. Schedule 1 of this bill will provide a tax offset to small businesses with a turnover below $2 million. The tax offset will be 5% of the business's tax liability. Schedule 2 amends the Income Tax Assessment Act of 1997 to provide an immediate deductibility of expenses to small business with a turnover below $2 million. Schedule 3 introduces legislation to allow small businesses to access fringe benefits tax for portable electronic devices provided they are for work purposes. In my electorate, everyone understands the nature of the small business, and lots of my friends have businesses, small businesses, which do more than $2 million. They would like us to do more in this space, and we would like to do more in this space. I don't think there's anybody in this parliament that doesn't back small business, who don't understand the need, the urgency the small business must have to prosper. We have in this place a willingness to put our hand in other people's pockets, and that's how we operate, and it's very important. But we must be able to do it from a position where they understand it. My parents worked very, very hard in small businesses. The traditional family unit of mum and dad at work and mum at home when the kids get home from school didn't apply to us. Mum and dad worked their businesses very hard. My dad and my mum didn't get into small business because they liked filling out forms. They didn't get into small business because they liked working long hours. What they got into small business for is because they wanted an opportunity to create wealth and opportunity for us, their children, to prosper. Now, the three boys, my two brothers and I, have done reasonably well in our lives and have gone on to those things. And it's through no small measure to the effort that my parents worked opening a shop in New Farm in Brisbane from 5 in the morning and closing at 8 o'clock at night, 363 days a year, with a half day on Good Friday and a half day Christmas Day. In my maiden speech, I made the point that what government has to do is get our hands out of our pockets, hands out of small businesses' pockets, and get off their back. That accountants and solicitors must no longer become de facto tax collectors and compliance officers. They must be the ones that allow small business to grow, that allow small business to plan their next move as opposed to making sure they don't get into trouble. Everyone in this place, I hope, understands that government does not create wealth. Business creates wealth. What government can do is set up the circumstances around which business can operate. If we do that successfully, business operates, people get employed, wealth is generated, reinvested in our community, and so on. People buy cars, people buy houses, people buy TVs, people buy everything, and go through, send their kids to school, teachers get employed, all that sort of thing. We need, what the government does do is get some big projects in that small business can operate through. Small business can't do the $500 million dam. The small business can't do the $16 billion Carmichael mine. But what small business can do is form part of the logistics chain. What small business can do is form part of the services that provide for those big facilities. I've said before in this House, and I'll say it again, I'll say it till something happens. What we have done in this place when it comes to, and in the state government in particular, when it has come to the tendering processes, we have made these things so big that the local firms can no longer tender. So we think we're saving money by making a job instead of $10–20 million jobs, we're making a $200 million job, and we're saying that provides economy of scale and it provides certainty for the taxpayer. But are we providing the best value? Are we providing the best value for the taxpayer? Because for mine, the way I see it, and I've said it before in this house, when you see those big jobs now and you see those things done, it seems to me, and again I will state, I have no actual evidence of this, but it seems to me that the profit is taken at the very start, not what is left over at the end. And it's the subcontractor, it's the person who lives in the city, and especially I talk from a regional perspective here, because these jobs come in. We have complied and we have made these things so hard to get there that only big businesses can actually achieve all those things. We get tender documents which are a foot thick. We turn them over, we go to the back, we check the numbers, the lowest number still gets it. But because the numbers are so big, because the compliance things are so much, because the regulations are so big, we can't, our local firms can't do them. So we get a lend-lease, so John Holland and Tees come into Townsville and into regional Australia, into regional Queensland, and they do the job and we get a great bit of infrastructure. But the profit doesn't stay in our community. The people don't stay in our community. And the infrastructure is there, but the money has only washed through our community once. So what government must do is when we get these big projects, we must make sure that they are structured so that the local firms, with the taxpayer being protected at all times and giving value to the taxpayer. But if we could break those things down to $20 or $30 million jobs and let the local contractor have a real shot at these things, I think that we will be able to show that we can get better value for money in our communities. If we can get these things to wash through so that, what I mean by that is that the first firm gets it, everyone's employed by them, even all the way down to the bloke who drives the pie van that comes out to them to see them at morning tea. He's getting money and he's making some money on the way through. We're all winning. When it comes to the north of Australia, my seat of Herbert is based in Townsville. What we need to do is make sure that we're backing our industry. We need to make sure that we're making it as easy for people to get into business as we possibly can. This bill principally applies to smaller businesses, but what we must do is make sure that when we get these small businesses that we are able to back them. And it brings me to what I want to talk about today, and that's the Carmichael Mine. Let it make no mistake, the Adani project, Carmichael Mine, it was not rejected by it was not turned over by the federal court. What it says of one part of one briefing note, of one bit of paper, was not in the briefing note that went to the minister. We need to make sure that that thing gets proved as quickly as possible. Because whether we like it or not, the problem for industry in North Australia, the problem for industry in Townsville is that we pay all the wastage of power from the Pine River Shire. From the Pine River all the way through, all the power that is shedded with transmission, industry has to pay for. So we can't get a real go at that. So what we have done, what Townsville Enterprise and myself and people around Townsville and around our region have done, is we're getting together to do our own energy white paper. We'll be feeding this into the North Australia the North Australia Development Northern Australia people. We're feeding it into Ian Macfarlane's office and the Minister for Industry. When it comes to what we can do with power in North Queensland, with the Carmichael Mine being at Claremont, they will need some form of power there. So what will most likely happen is that they will build their own power station there and burn the overburden to create electricity. What can we do as a government with this new renewable energy target, with our new emissions thing? What can we do to make that better? What can we do in our region to make these things happen? What can we do in our region to assist with those things? Now, I have always been of the opinion that what I want in Townsville is a stinking great big coal-fired power station right in the heart of Townsville so that we can ensure that power is delivered as cheaply as possible. And the question I have asked Townsville Enterprise to ask the experts in our area is why that shouldn't be done. Why we need a mosaic. Why Tully Millstream with its hydroelectricity should be used. Why we have the world's best solar power precinct west of Hughenden. Why we have even wind at the Kennedy Wind Farm. Why the Burdekin Dam can't be raised to produce hydroelectricity. Why we can't use the ethanol come from North Queensland Business Energy, North Queensland Bioenergy at Ingham. Why they can't be going into a mosaic. And why through the development of Northern Australia we can't bring in and provide as a government the connectivity around that thing to make sure that we have the mosaic of power supplies to make sure that our energy market is competitive, that our energy market is as cost effective and our energy market gives as much help to big business as humanly possible. Because if we get big business going, it gets small business started, and that's what this bill is all about. That's what government is supposed to do. Government is supposed to set the agenda so that small business can operate in this space. If we get the big picture right, small business will flourish. We don't have to do anything for them because they're doing it already. What we do have to do is just tell them to take the handbrake off. What we do have to do with them is tell them there'll be certainty. And what my city is seeing at the moment is we are seeing a lack of confidence, and it comes from having things like this mine, which has been in the offing for an awfully long time now. This is a good project, not just for Australia, not just for North Queensland. This is a good project for India. This is a good project for the world. We need to be able to produce this stuff and be able to get this stuff out of here because it is good for everyone. Coal will still be a major player in our city. It'll still be a major player in our country. And I'm proud to stand up here and say that we've got a fantastic mine going west of Townsville, and I will fight for it every day in my community. And if need be, I'll fight the election on it. But I hope we've already started digging by then. So this bill here is all about making sure that we are doing as much as possible to get out of the road of small business. If the federal government can get the macro right, the micro will look after itself. And if we can just start taking these little bits of red tape away from small business, if we can start to say, if small business can have that conversation with government, say, look, I understand now. The scary part is that in the first year of our omnibus repeal days, we removed over 50,000 pages of legislation. And you know what? No one noticed. No one noticed that we removed over 50,000 pages of legislation. No one noticed that we removed over 75,000 rules and regulations out of this place. That's how much work we've got to do. What we have to do now, and the job that Christian Porter, the Parliamentary Secretary, is doing, is a big job. But it's worth doing because we need to support our industry. We need to support the areas that are not just where we are. We need to support where we're going to be. If we are to be 5 to 6 million people in the north of Australia, we are going to need major energy. We are going to need major input. We are going to need good baseload power, but we will need it delivered in a mosaic of fashions which make sure that we are equaling our world target. I've always said that everything we do in our lives impacts on the environment. It's how we manage those impacts which makes us work. So this bill is about making sure that we're doing, that this Parliament, that this party, that this government is doing what we can to get out of the road of business, to get out of the road of small business, to make sure that they have the opportunity to grow. Because if they can grow, it means their kids are going to school, it means that their kids are getting cars, it means that the mechanics are getting work, it means that the service stations are working, it means that everyone in our community benefits. And that's what this legislation has got to be about, and that's what government has to be about as far as I'm concerned. I support this legislation. I think it's a great bit of legislation, but it is just a start. I thank the House.